As you can see, I'm sitting not center in the camera. Therefore, we have this beautiful blank white wall behind me where I can put the book cover, something I normally don't do. But I read so much stuff this past month that I'm just going to do that. A lot of it was on my e-reader, so make it simpler to show that cover off for you. So I have a list here. I went through about 13 different pieces. I say pieces because I read a few short stories, and I read a few full short story collections as well as novels. And there's a pretty good a variety of things I read. Some really funny things, some really hyper disturbing works. So let's just start quickly with the DNFs, stuff I did not get through. To start, Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. I started reading this, and like people have said, you don't know what you're getting yourself into, and you're like, yeah, okay, you really don't. It reads very slowly, and I had read about 400 plus pages of the text as well as a significant amount of the footnotes, of which there is complete stories and chapters within them. And so I read a lot, and it just feels like I read 1,000 pages. It's so slow going. There's virtually no plot. Um, I do think this is excellently written. It's David Foster Wallace, and I have to say there are some very funny moments. There are very clever moments, and I found that there were things that were very touching and poignant, and I enjoyed reading. But overall, this just didn't hook me, and I felt like I was wasting my time. Like, and the time I'm spent just barreling through this book, I could be reading something else. I really gave it a shot. I don't think it's a book that I'm gonna totally disregard. Like, I might come back to it at some point, and I really mean that because there was something in there that was cool, but it didn't get its claws in me. And I think it's something that's worth revisiting for a third time. Who knows? But yeah, I didn't finish that. The next was Special Topics in Calamity Physics by Marisha Pessl. This one was actually especially disappointing because I had been wanting to read this for a while. I've recommended Marisha Pessl's book Night Film on this channel many times. I've reviewed it in full. It's a great dark thriller that reads like a David Fincher film. It's a lot of fun. Special Topics to me felt like a young adult novel. The more I read it, the more it became clear. It was very quirky and funny and self-referential and meta in very ways. It's a very creatively written book, especially for a first novel. It just started to feel like a young adult novel, and she has a few young adult novels. I've always said that we want good young adult writers, certainly, and I still feel that way. I think she's one of them. It just feels young adult, and I just didn't want to read that. So that's Special Topics in Calamity Physics. It didn't really do it for me. Let's get on to short stories. Two short stories that I just read away outside of their collection. The first was Especially Heinous. The full title, I think, is Especially Heinous 272 Views of Law and Order SVU. I reviewed that on this channel a few days ago if you want to watch that review. It's an incredible short story. It's like weird fiction. It's very odd. It's an incredible... I'm going to do, at a certain point this summer, like best top 10 stories I read this year or something like that. It's going to be hard pressed to knock that off of a number one spot. It's fantastic. It's from a collection called, and if I didn't even say, the author's name is Carmen Maria Machado. It's from a collection called Her Body and Other Parties. The next short story I read was Under the Black Water. That's from a collection called Things We Lost in the Fire, and that's by Mariana Enriquez, who wrote Our Share of Night. She also has a collection, I think, that's called The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. And she actually, as far as I know, has a new collection coming out later this year, so that's cool. I just really wanted to read this story. I've heard great things. I should have just read the whole collection. It was very, very good. Really good. And a very different type of writing than Her Body and Other Parties, but really good horror. Very, very good story. I'm going to probably read the whole collection. What do we have? Now I have two more full collections I've read. The first being The Best Horror of the Year. These are collections that come out every year, edited by Ellen Datlow, who's pretty famous in the horror story realm. She's a famous, well-respected editor. And I've read some of her stuff, particularly the Body Shocks collections, which are pretty crazy. I've read some of that stuff, and I thought that she had a good eye for horror, and I kind of always felt like I was in line with what her tastes were. And so I just decided to start from the beginning. and read the first one. And this was pretty good. It wasn't great. There was a number of stories that were like, I don't think anything was really bad in here. But a number of them were like, okay, I'm never going to remember that story. But there were some really good stories in here. So I will keep reading those collections, I think. It was enough to keep me going. And the last short story collection I read, which I also reviewed recently, was Hot Pink by Adam Levin. I said his name wrong. It's Adam Levin, not Adam Levin. And I believe I said his name 375 times in the Hot Pink review. I was like, Adam Levin, Levin, Levin. So it's Levin. So Adam Levin, this cat writes his ass off. He's unbelievably funny. He writes in a bizarre, postmodern, absurdist way. His books are... He wrote Bubblegum and The Instructions and Mount Chicago, and his shit is smoking good. So I'm going to read The Instructions next of his, and I'm just really looking forward to sinking my teeth into that. So the Hot Pink was awesome. Next, we're going to get on to the full novels. There are 6 of them, and I've tried to order them in from like the least to like the most, but all of these I really liked. So the first is The Road to the Wall by Shirley Jackson. This is Jackson's first novel, and I believe this was published in 1948. And it's kind of an unassuming story. It's about this family that I don't remember the name of the street. If it was Pepper Street, I'm not exactly sure, but it's these upper class families that live on this little neighborhood on the street, and a wall that separates them from, let's basically say, the poorer folks, the less deserving in their eyes neighborhoods, is going to be taken down. And it's them kind of freaking out over, the potentiality of poor people coming into their upper class neighborhood, of which I don't even think it's a rich neighborhood. I think it's just an upper middle class neighborhood. And so it's a lot of just going around to the different families and little scenes. It's very quirky and dark and weird. And I didn't love it, but I thought it was a very cool book. And it was oddly fun, it was funny. I wasn't expecting a funny novel. It was funny. So I'll definitely continue to read Jackson for sure. But that first one was just okay. It was like a 3.5-star read. It was good. Would I read it again? I think I would after I've read all of her stuff. I think I'll have a newfound appreciation for it. But as it was just a fine read. It was good. Next is the New York Trilogy by Paul Auster, who sadly just passed away. As a matter of fact, he passed away like a week after I read this book. One that I liked. I didn't love it, but that was good. It's 3 weird postmodern detective novels. And I shouldn't say weird. It's not like weird fiction. They're just postmodern stories. They're very postmodern. He plays around heavily with the format of telling you the story. None of these read at all like traditional detective novels. And if you go into this looking for that, you're going to be disappointed. There's not really a mystery to be solved here. The first story was the one that really was my favorite. I think it was called City of Glass, which was like a detective losing his mind and his identity. It was a very cool read. I like this, and I think that not my favorite, but I think I would read more Paul Auster, and shame he's passed away, but looks like he's got a lot of great books for me to check out. Next was God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, or I believe Pearls Before Swine is the alternative title, by Mr. Kurt Vonnegut. And I like this one. It's a 3.5, 4-star read for me. I liked it. I didn't love it. Very funny, but it just didn't quite hook me in the way that Cat's Cradle did. Cat's Cradle was more, I don't know, just gut-bustingly hilarious. This one was very funny too, but it didn't quite catch my attention the way Cat's Cradle did. But nonetheless, a fine read. Certainly, of course, we'll probably read everything Kurt Vonnegut's written. I really like his style. Now we're getting into the stuff that I really like. These are all 5-star books, and I still tried to rank them in order of how much I liked them. But The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris. I have reviews for all of these on my channel. Man, this book was so unbelievably good. I love the film. It's one of my favorite movies ever. It's a very tastefully done film. And while I expected a tastefully done book, I still felt like this was going to be more of a traditional thriller. And it does read like a thriller. It's very thrilling. It's very quick reading. It has that kind of feel. You're compelled to keep reading to find out what happens, but I was shocked by how well it's written. Some gorgeous prose in here, some beautiful poetic-like lines that just took me by surprise. incredible characterization, very smartly written, and freaky. Way scarier than the novel. There was stuff with Buffalo Bill in here that was just way freakier than the movie ever was. So it was an incredible read. The only other Harris book I read was Hannibal. So I'm going to go and read Red Dragon, which is the first book, but I'd like to read that. Next is The Black Dahlia by James Ellroy. One of the finest detective novels, mystery. It's really a noir. And as a matter of fact, if I could get particular, I would classify it as a postmodern noir. It feels like Ellroy is Bret Easton Ellis, got them confused. Taking the noir, like the classic Chandler novels and things like that, and just flipping it on its head and writing this gritty, no bullshit 40s cop book. It's unbelievably written. I mean, I have a whole review, so if you want to hear my full thoughts on this novel, you can check that out. But it's thrilling in the way you would expect a book like this to be, but also very smart and layered and quite complicated and historical and informative. I'm just listing off random adjectives at this point, but really it is truly a transcendent read. It is exceptional literature. It was an amazing book. The last book, it's just not the thing I normally read, but it's Negative Space by B.R. Yeager. Again, a review if you want to hear my full thoughts, but transgressive dark fiction, surreal horror, hallucinogenic. It's a strange read. It's extremely strong subject matter. If you want to read this, it's really intense. But I don't read transgressive fiction that much. Now, to differentiate transgressive fiction from like splatterpunk, where it's like just insanely over the top, like really strong material. I always feel like transgressive fiction tries to take something from that and make something of it, or present a point like almost present a point that's not related to the violence by using it in a weird way, like American Psycho, using insane over the top violence to tell this point about something almost unrelated to that. Very clever. This book does that. It's written like a David Lynch fever dream. Like it has this weird feel to it, surreal, very intense. I thought that this was written very tastefully, very smartly. It was an excellent read. It was very compelling. I could not put it down. I was shocked that this is not to say that B.R. Yeager is not a well-respected author, but he's not a household name. I don't think this is a book you can go to your bookstore and just pick up on the shelf. It should be. This is the kind of thing I would expect to possibly be taught in the collegiate level. It's that good. And as a matter of fact, I started reading his first novel, Amygdalatropolis, and in some ways I think that's even more of a tough, and when I say tough, I mean because of the subject matter, and it's just a challenging read. I think that book is even more challenging than this, but just very smart stuff. Really smart guy, and a funny, cool guy. I always like when I finish a book that really hooks me, going and watching author interviews and stuff to kind of get into their head. With James Ellroy, you can't really do that because he trolls in interviews.
Listen, you little cocksuckers. I have one thing to say to them. Fuck you, you're wrong.
It's really freaking funny, but yeah, B.R. Yeager seems like a really cool dude. So a lot of stuff, actually. A lot of cool stuff. I'm currently reading a few things. I always read a few things at once. I'm reading primarily right now A Simple Plan by Scott Smith, the guy that wrote The Ruins. He's probably best known for The Ruins, but he also wrote A Simple Plan. Came out in 1993, and it's a thriller about these guys that discover money that doesn't belong to them, and they decide to keep it, and it's all going to go crazy and haywire and wrong. You can expect, it's going to be one of those kind of thrillers. So far, so good. The Ruins was a 5-star read for me. Very surprising. I thought it was going to be a great, fun little horror novel. It was excellent. Smith has only written 2 books, which is a shame. But yeah, I'll let you know what I think of that one. And also, I'm reading... I decided to just start reading Things We Lost in the Fire, the Mariana Enriquez short story collection. So that's what I'm reading right now. A lot of fun stuff. I'll be back with more. Let me know what you've read recently, or if you've read any of these books, what you think of them. And I'll see you next time. Peace out.